Hello, and welcome to our special series of Green Elephant interviews during March 2021, supporting the annual B Corps month. B corporations, or B Corps for short, are businesses that meet the highest standards of verified social and environmental performance, public transparency and legal accountability to balance profit and purpose. Throughout March, we are chatting with key people in companies which have chosen to certify as B Corps and become a force for good. Today I've been joined by Ros Heathcote from Borough Broth Company. Borough Broth Company was founded by our guest in 2015 to use British ingredients, spring water, organic vegetables and a few carefully selected seasonings to create their delicious pouches of award-winning bone broths. Now, bone broth is said to support gut health, provide a great source of nutrients, protein and natural collagen. They've been a certified B Corporation for 2 months this month, which is great. Founding broth lady, Ros Heathcote, has a love for slow, patient cooking with simple organic ingredients. Bouncing from business intelligence to boiler of brilliant broths, Ros is going to tell us how they are a better business by becoming a B Corp. I hope you enjoyed that alliteration and welcome to the show, Ros.
That's amazing. Thank you for having me.
And delighted to have you here. And I really do want to kick off and understand, how did someone move from being an SAP specialist through a sojourn into self-consultancy and then become a producer of fine broths?
Good question. I'm still trying to work it out myself. But,
what happened?
Yeah, it's a weird one. So I was an SAP, for people who don't know what SAP is. It's software. I did a music degree.
Hey, welcome to the show, because Mike is a graduate of the Royal Academy of Music as well.
Oh, so. Amazing. Oh, well, I went to Leeds College of Music, and which is not quite the Royal Academy, but we did, I did sound engineering, so it was kind of techie. Brilliant. Yeah, so I wanted to be a music producer and songwriter, and finished uni and got stuck in fixing computers because it was a good way to make money.
Yeah.
And kind of got stuck in it for 10 years, basically. So I'm just...
I wouldn't say SAP was fixing computers, but well, this
is the thing. So then I sort of, without going into too much depth about my IT career, sort of found myself just sort of progressing quite quickly and ended up becoming a software developer. And obviously I think it's all linked because it's all maths, and music is maths.
Yes.
And I'm quite sort of technically minded, I suppose. So yeah, it all kind of flowed, and I ended up becoming a data visualization expert, which is
awesome.
But basically I would make data look nice, and I used to design sort of iPad apps for CEOs and things like that.
Oh, okay.
So it was really interesting. I was working at Burberry for 2 years, and then Coca-Cola for 4 years. And actually loved it. I mean, I have to say I loved the jobs I did, and they were intense, but quite stressful. Lots of travel, and not great for the diet, not great for just life in general. Yes. And I was really run down. So I started to develop allergies, and and I became quite inflamed, really.
Yes.
So I found myself making a lot of bone broth, basically. And, I'd learned about foods to restore your health, and that was one thing that really helped. I'd sort of grown up, my mum's got Jewish heritage, so she was always boiling chickens. And so I think I sort of seemed a natural thing to me to sort of get the goodness out of the bones and to use it in my food. And then I read about how we used to have a lot more collagen in our diet, and actually it's fundamental to everything, our hair, skin, our organs, everything. So my health started to improve, my allergies started to reduce. So it was having a really good impact on my life.
Right.
And I was buying bones from I was actually getting them for free from a butcher near me. And one day I got chatting to him about his website, and I was giving him some technical advice. And he said, "I'll tell you what, if you can give me a bit more of your time, I'll give you as many bones as you like." Because he knew, because he was like, no one wants these things. Like, you're the only person buying them, other than giving them to people's dogs.
Yeah.
So
Bones for business intelligence. I like that.
exactly. So I was like, what a deal. And I said, well, how many have you got? And he said, more than you'll ever need. We throw them away or we incinerate them. And I was like, that's insane, because they're such an amazing source of nutrition. And he said, yeah, but it takes a long time to cook them, and they're heavy to transport. And so, yeah, we generally don't sell them. We incinerate them or pay for them to be taken away. So
people have gone off the idea of that kind of, people don't do real cooking so much either, do they? So they might buy a chicken breast, which is in a nice plastic wrapped, and then bung it in the oven. But they rarely get, or they might, obviously, we do buy them, but a whole chicken. But then once you cut the breast off and eat the legs, the rest goes in the bin.
Yeah, which even now that I have, a company making it, if I roast a chicken, I cannot throw that carcass away. I have to use it. So to me, it's like as valuable as the meat. So he was like, basically, if you sort out the transport, take as many as you like. So to be honest, within a couple of weeks, I was like, right, I've set up a company, I've hired some equipment, I found a kitchen in East London. Like, I'm just going to make it small scale and try and sell it online and see how it goes, kind of thing. So and then it just, within about 3 months, I'd been found by Selfridges, and we launched with Selfridges.
Oh wow, that's a good bunch of people to get found by.
It is, yeah, on Instagram, which is why I love social media.
Okay, yeah.
And then and so it just sort of got a bit out of hand, and I worked full time for 2 years whilst running this on the side, basically.
Wow.
So,
What, on your own? You were boiling solo, were you? Or
no, so I basically rented space in a kitchen that was owned by or leased by a catering company. So okay. I just trained their staff, and I set up all these fancy spreadsheets. So everything was kind of, they knew what they needed to do each day, and they got a mandate, and they knew what, So I basically ran it remotely and would pop in at the weekends and, do things. But yeah.
Well, I must admit, it's probably one of the strangest journeys into food business I've ever heard. It's obviously focused on the fact that the bones are a waste product. So, what about, obviously there's a big movement towards less meat, veganism, and whatever else. What's your position on that? Because obviously you're a predominantly meat-based product.
Yeah, I mean, I think the move towards veganism, I think that movement is underpinned by a really, really positive thing, which is people are becoming more aware of where their food's coming from and the impact it has on the environment, which is something that's very important to me.
Yes.
And I think maybe the way my views differ from somebody who's a staunch vegan is that I feel that I believe in permaculture, and ideally, to me, livestock works very closely in agriculture with regards to monocrops are the problem, in my opinion. Yep. So I think livestock's really important to healthy soil and actually just cultivating good crops generally. So I think there's a place for livestock, and it's a decision people have to make themselves, whether they're comfortable with eating meat. And no, but the good thing I think about organic meat, which is what I work in, is that you know where it comes from, and there's the traceability there, and you know how that meat's been reared, and you know that it's very high welfare. And so it was non-negotiable for me that our business became organic and is strictly organic. So yeah, so I feel that's more my ethical stance, is organic. I think that's the way to improve agriculture.
Yeah.
But I do agree that the vegan movement is coming from a very positive place. It's just not entirely aligned with what I believe in.
No, and I think as I mentioned to you earlier before we came on the podcast, that we went vegan for a month, and it was imperfect veganism is probably what we would um, seek to aim for, because in our balanced world that we're seeking to find in people, planet, and profit, there's people in there as well. So you can think all about the planet and basically throw the people under the bus, but at some point or another, you have to recognize that people have choice, they have diets, they have medical conditions which might not allow
Yes.
them to do certain things. So it's a tricky balance.
Yes, and I could bang on about it, but I think also, without sounding awful, I think a lot of individual crops of vegetables or soya or whatever doesn't come without having blood on its hands. And I think that's the problem, is that people think if they pick a vegetarian item, that it doesn't mean that, there isn't pest control or pesticides or all these things which can cause a huge amount of harm to the biodiversity and animal life. So it's an interesting one about, and it becomes very philosophical about levels of sentient beings and all those things. So yeah, it's something I think about all the time, and I've personally come to terms with. But I think the best way to do things is just to research what you're eating and where it comes from and how it's been cultivated, and then you're on a good track, I think.
So let's go back to this organic it's not a concept, the approach to farming that is organic. Just for those that perhaps don't know what organic is, how would you define it?
Well, it's interesting. It means different things to
It
different
does, yeah.
people, and different associations, offer slightly different guidelines. So we are, which is very frustrating actually.
It is, yes.
Um, but we as a company are Soil Association Organic, which is a specific set of standards. In my opinion, some of the highest standards in the world.
Okay.
And it affects everything. It's quite holistic. So as a food producer, they focus with us. We are audited on obviously where we get our produce from, and
Yep.
we have a full traceability that it's coming from organic farms. But if you're buying organic food products, the packaging's been researched, how it's processed, how the kitchen's cleaned. So even the chemicals that are used in the kitchen to ensure there's nothing that could harm humans or biodiversity anywhere, the water, all these things are taken into account. And then from a farming perspective, it's all about, there's welfare standards to ensure that animals have a certain amount of outside time, space, access to certain, food and water. And then as well as the health of the soil and the food that they eat and where that comes from. So it's a full circle, basically. Which is what I love about it. So yeah, sorry, it's not a short answer because it's massive.
And I think that's why I threw it over to you, because as you said, organic means many different things. But the Soil Association one I looked a little bit at as we were preparing for the show, and it does seem a very, very high standard to have to meet, because all these pesticides, we're doing damage in places just trying to create these monocrops, and then we've got Soil Association. Why would you bother with meat? The first thing you think, oh, but you do of course use vegetables. So managing a supply chain for you, if they do ticking off organic, that must be quite a tricky game, really.
Yep. I think that's why there's not many people doing what I'm doing, because actually it takes up so much of my time, is the supply chain, and I still manage that mostly myself because it's actually the area I'm most passionate about, because I love talking to the suppliers and the farms and knowing where everything's coming from and getting exciting products that has a good story to it. So yeah, but it's no small feat. But I'm pleased to say that the organic world is growing. So more farms are converting to organic. So we're getting more and more things opening up to us, which is great.
And the health benefits and the land benefits are amazing in all of that. You mentioned organic packaging?
Yeah, it's not organic packaging.
Oh yeah, okay, but so packaging is always an issue. Obviously, people talk about
100%.
packaging and labeling quite a lot. So I just want to throw out, what are your challenges with packaging?
Oh, it's one of those things I'm massively passionate about. It's probably also why I'm still in the supply chain side of things, because I can't quite let go,
No,
because we use plastic packaging, which gets a bad rap, excuse the pun. But it's sorry, it's terrible.
sorry, I had to add the W. It took me a few seconds.
But I think I have looked at the numbers and looked at the data, and for me it wasn't the most sustainable option, because we transport nationwide. So flexible, lightweight plastic packaging that can be recycled is actually far better than heavy glass, which sort of has the perception of being sustainable when actually it takes an awful long time to decompose. It's very expensive to recycle, and it's very expensive to transport, and there's a huge amount of wastage because it breaks a lot. So all those things combined, it's actually greener for us to use flexible plastic packaging at the moment. But that's been approved by the Soil Association. So you have to run everything by them before they'll let you put their stamp on it. So
it's quite impressive, really, because the Soil Association being worried about, all the way through to the essentially their commercial outlet of where the soil was what fed the cows, sort of thing,
yeah,
through to the fact that it needs to be to the door of the consumer. That's interesting.
yeah, and I think, sorry, carry on.
No, I mean, you carry on. If you've got another point on packaging, please do.
No, I mean, I actually I host a talk every 2 weeks with a load of packaging experts on Clubhouse, which is a new social media.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we're on it as well. So yeah.
Oh, you are. Oh, you have to join. It's on
I
Sunday.
will join in. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's all about this, because it was a few of us brand owners talking about trying to make the right decisions, and actually it's very hard to know, and the public consumers' perception of plastic, for example, is completely demonized, whereas actually if it's used and recycled correctly, it's a really useful material. But I'm also working with a Seaweed film producer, and potentially we will be producing concentrated broths in seaweed sachets that degrade within 2 weeks, which are good for the soil. So wow. I'm super excited.
I look forward to seeing that one. Yeah, we'd brilliant. Well, I live down in Cornwall. We've got a fair bit of seaweed down here, so if you need any help,
I think that's where they're getting it from, actually.
Of course they are. We're the seaweed capital of the world. No, don't let that put any tourists off. The beaches are beautiful. So you, I read an interesting statistic. Sorry, me fumbling around in my notes here. I read an interesting statistic that over the last few months, 1 pouch of Borough Broth has been opened every minute. Yeah. There's the number cruncher in you coming out, isn't it?
Yeah. I obviously I specialize in data, so I'm always looking at data and pulling it together, and I love pulling out statistics. And so I sent it to my marketing manager. I was like, "Did you know?" And she was like, "All right, we'll publish it. We'll let people know." Right, but I thought, I was really excited about it. I was like, that sounds legit. That sounds like we're a proper business.
Yeah, you actually got a stat.
Yeah,
some intelligence out of it and converted it into understandable figures.
Yeah.
So 1 for every second is next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. So changing subject a little bit before I get onto the B Corp side, because you're a brand new B Corp. We're sitting in B Corp month. On the 8th of March is International Women's Day. Have you faced difficulties in being essentially a new emergent CEO, managing director of a business? Has that been a problem for you?
As a woman, I haven't personally found. It's interesting. Obviously, in my career, since I was, a teen going into professional life, I have certainly faced difficulties being a woman. That's by the that's like, I don't think there's one woman I know who's had a profession who hasn't. So from that perspective, of course, you're always faced with challenges when it comes to misogyny, potentially. But I think I have a background in IT, and obviously that's a very male-dominated industry.
Very unusual, yeah.
So I had pink hair, and was very sort of out there as a software developer amongst a lot of white men in suits. And so I learnt very early on in my early 20s how to work with the boys, and to still be a woman. And so when I moved into food manufacturing, it's still very much, especially when it comes to the top level jobs, it's still very much male dominated.
Yes.
And I feel like it's a matter of, I've not found it a problem because I'm confident with what I'm doing, and I think that there's less of a stigma now. But yeah, I think I certainly do get some raised eyebrows, and occasionally someone will come to my warehouse and be like, "Excuse me, love, where's the boss?" kind of thing. I'll get a bit of that, but which I quite enjoy.
I'll just see if I can go find her. Hold on a second.
Yeah, and like my ops manager's a man, and occasionally we'll have people who come in who will direct all of their conversations to him. Yeah, so those kind of things I sort of, I'm used to, and I know how to handle. But to say that it's all been plain sailing would be lying.
No, and I suppose in theory you shouldn't have to make up a strategy. I don't have to make up a strategy of dealing with a woman or a man. So why should women have to, or have to combat other people's preconceptions? Let's say I wouldn't even call it a prejudice necessarily.
It was funny though. I have to say though, for B Corp, there was one of the questions was about our suppliers.
Yes.
And it asks you, okay, who are your main suppliers, and are any of them owned or run by minorities, or even females, women-led or anything that's not white men, basically. Which I feel bad. I feel like white men get bad.
Yeah, I'm feeling it.
I mean, I don't feel that bad, but you know what I mean. But it was very funny because I would ring round all these companies that had no idea, and I'd be like, can you just tell me about the people? Oh, okay, a white man. Okay. And like, honestly, it was like none of them had female leaders, let alone a person of color or anything. So I think we've got a long way to go.
We have got a long way to go, but it's not something that's easily fixable because it's kind of developed that way. It's like capitalism, isn't it? It's going to be a tough one to try and revolutionize, but that's what we're trying to do. And that brings us neatly onto the B Corp discussion. So you'd been running since 2015, and then presumably 3-4 years or 2-3 years ago, you found out about B Corps, and what? Why join the movement? Why certificate for a start?
Well, it's an interesting one. I think for me, being organic as a business, we're held accountable for everything we do anyway. So we're audited heavily on how we run as a business, and a lot of the elements in there are to do with sustainability and animal welfare.
Yeah.
The other side for me, which I'm really passionate about, we're a London living wage payer. So and that's something I instilled very early on.
Yeah.
And I'm very passionate about investing in people and paying correctly, which I feel London living wage is. It shouldn't go any lower than that. So those things I was already passionate about, and I guess actually it was interesting, the application process, the impact assessment with the B Corp, it was more just wrapping it up rather than us having to transform as a business. So
No.
for me, it was like, oh, one holistic score. And actually what it did was highlight areas in the business that I hadn't thought enough about, and that I can improve next time. So I'm very much a person who wants to sleep easily at night, and just knowing that all these things are being thought about and improved makes me feel like I'm running a good business. So as much as the bottom line is important, it's how it impacts everybody who works for the company and everybody who consumes the products and the environment. So yeah, without trying to sound like Mother Teresa, it's about
I've never heard Mother Teresa sound like talk about broth.
Talk about her bottom line.
So see, the certification's fresh in your mind. Presumably you led on that, or did we have somebody that could help you with that?
Oh, I had someone help me. So my HR consultant, she helps me with all sorts of HR related things, but she's also advised to other companies on getting their B Corp certification.
Oh, okay.
So she was, when I said, oh, I was thinking of doing it, she was like, actually, I've done this with 2 other companies. So she walked me through everything, which was great.
Did you find it a tricky, because you were so obviously wedded to a sustainable product set and lifestyle, and obviously committed to already some good people activities. I can't think what I'm going to call them. Was it an easy ride to get through the certification?
I wouldn't say an easy ride, but interestingly, it was less about. It wasn't about oh God, we're going to have to change or improve this. It was more like it's just a really lengthy application form.
Yeah.
So that was what took us a year, basically, because often the buck would stop with me, and it would be like, right, Ros, you've got all these questions you need to answer, and I'd be like, oh, I've got too much to do. So it would take me a month before I'd answer the next 10 questions. So actually that was the hardest bit, was just actually working through it. And I think the other thing is, it thinks quite, it's American originally, so I think it's still slightly converting to other countries.
Yeah, to a more generic,
yeah. And I think it also thinks about very big companies. So what's interesting is it's helped me think bigger with regards to, I don't have a board. I'm the only director of my business. So often it would be sort of questions directed at, do you have board meetings about this? And I'm like, well, I guess I could sit down once a month and have a think about it, things like that. So, and now I'm trying to get more of the management in my team to think about sustainability, and we discuss it and have regular meetings about that sort of thing. So
yeah. It's it is a bit of a challenge for smaller businesses in a different way, because although you haven't got perhaps the workforce to bring on board, or the product range to revolutionize and redesign, or the supply chain that wasn't built on a good, solid, sustainable concept, that they have a lot of work to do, but they'll have the resources perhaps to put into it and to change themselves. So yeah, that's interesting. Even the smaller business has to struggle a little bit, because it is in depth.
Yeah, hugely. Yeah.
So why, you've been a B Corp for a couple of months, nearly a couple of months. There's a buzz about being a B Corp for the first time, which is why you get to enter a beehive. And the bee puns will continue throughout our whole series of and we'll explain them as we go. But the beehive, you get to enjoy the community a little bit more. But what do you value about about being a B Corp, even though you've only been in the party fully for the last couple of months?
Yeah, and in fact, I only just got access to beehives, so I'm just starting to investigate it more. But for me, I mean, thus far, obviously, it's locked down still. So, the networking side of things sadly we can't physically do, but the amount of brands that, some who I already knew, but some that I didn't, who've reached out just to say, like, great to have you on board, like, let's keep this community growing. and it's such a, I don't know, it's quite a heartwarming feeling there, because I think especially for small businesses, we're really doing it because we want to lead, we want to be held accountable, and we want bigger companies to be held accountable for what they're doing. And I think that's such an amazing force. So it feels like being part of a really incredible movement. So yeah, I'm just enjoying at the moment just sort of the glow of the aftermath of actually getting it, to be honest. So yeah, I'm looking
because
forward to
not to be underplayed, it's quite you know, the build up to getting through your assessment, then they kind of go, right, we're going to certify you, and you go,
yeah,
oh wow, we did it.
so
And
great.
and you get a certificate. And to be clear, and to anybody that wants to look, you can go on to the B Corporation site and you can search on Borough Broth Company, and you can look up what they're good on, what they're bad on, and it's a transparent scoring system as well. So don't think this is all behind smoked glass.
No, and we certainly have, you know, my goal is to up our score next time. So, you know, we've got areas that we need to work on. And actually what let us, well, not let us down, but what I realized was we actually need more data. So, you know, I
What a
know.
delight.
I was actually quite excited about it. But, you know, things like measuring our waste, all those things, just water usage and things like that. That we just haven't, you know, we've been building the business and scrambling around, and I've been making as ethical decisions as possible. But now it's about putting in metrics, basically. So I'm excited about that because that's actually my background. So
and it's certainly an advantage having that skill in the team at such a high level. Okay, that's been brilliant. I could probably ask you a dozen more questions, but we better move on to ask you if you had an action that you would recommend people could do.
Yeah, so I guess my one's quite on topic, but
quite right too.
Yeah, I feel like my action would be, if you're going to choose to eat meat, eat organic meat and spend that little bit more, because it makes such a difference. So,
I suppose in balancing that out, organic meat, yes, a little bit more. It's because it costs more to produce that that product. But organic meat is good. You could probably just eat a little less at the same time if you want to balance the price out.
Yeah.
If you're running on a budget, don't have a whacking great big T-bone steak. Have something that's a little bit more price worthy, but you'll find it tastier and better. And you can also be, you know, sit with a warm glow about how the fact that animals have been looked after up to the point that they became a meal.
Yeah.
That's great. I can buy into that, and I suppose that would extend to veggies as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. If you can, I mean, everything organic in my opinion, but yeah.
Is that tricky in the city? I live in the middle of nowhere, really, in terms of urban lifestyle. There's probably as many people in your part of London as there are in my whole county. And we do have a lot of very organic local farmers and dairy producers here as well, which is great. But how does London fare in your getting your hands on that kind of stuff?
It's pretty good. I mean,
good.
Yeah, we have our Whole Foods and our Planet Organics. So yeah, and to be honest, I have an organic butchers and grocers at the end of my road. So and I'm in relatively central northwest London. So yeah, I think we're pretty, yeah, it's very accessible here for sure.
Brilliant. Oh, that's good to hear, because I do worry so about you people in the city.
I'm sure. I have to say that you're in the best part of the country, you know, for good produce, I think. So
I think we are very fortunate. It's probably why we're a growing area in the B Corp group as well. So I'll be local, although only 14. When you think there's only 400, approaching 500 companies who are B Corps in the country, and 200 of them in London. In the rest of the country, we got 14 in a small little county, but we have got a lot of very, very smart businesses, which I think we're going to attract in. We've got a launch on the 10th of March for the Cornwall Be Local, which is we're really looking forward to, because I co-chair that particular delight, even though we've only been a B Corp since August.
So is that's a Zoom?
That's a Zoom call.
Yeah, that's nice.
I'll invite you along. So you also had a recommendation hopefully lined up for me.
Oh yes, so I brought a book. So it's by Brenda Assail, I think you say her name.
Yeah.
The London Restaurant. Now I've only just started reading it, so don't quiz me on it. But it is it was a present. But it's about the history of restaurants and the restaurant culture in London, starting from the sort of mid 1800s. And it's fascinating. It's got lots of data and statistics in it, which I love. But yeah, it's just fascinating to see how that's evolved and that our restaurant culture's evolved. So yeah.
It's very interesting because at one point the UK or London specifically was the highest concentration of vegan and vegetarian restaurants in the world.
Wow.
It was incredibly high. It's 3,500 of them in London. So London is packed with restaurants, and it'll be a fascinating book, I'm sure. Perhaps you can do a book club review for us later.
Sure, no problem. B Corp Book Club.
There's an idea. We could open a clubhouse on that one, couldn't we?
Yeah.
The clubhouse B Corp book, and then we'd invite somebody up to review their book of choice.
Yeah.
Like it. So finally, I get to test you on a few fact or fakes. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
I'm going to give you a fact, and challenge you whether you think it's right or wrong. Okay. So, if all of the food currently being lost or wasted globally were saved, it would be enough to feed 870 million people around the world. And obviously, there's some complications in actually making that happen, but the concept is if all the food we currently waste was saved, it would be enough to feed the majority of people that are starving.
I think that's true.
Yeah. Well, the twist is it's a fake.
Oh.
No, that's fine. The answer is if 25% of all the food we wasted, it would be enough to nearly feed. So 30% of the food we waste would be enough to feed every starving person on the planet.
It's criminal. Yeah.
It is, because there are 925 million people currently in the world starving, according to the UN. Gosh. Okay, let's do something a little bit more foodie.
Okay.
Chili peppers contain a chemical that tricks your mouth into thinking it's being burned. Is that a fact or a fake?
Ooh. I wouldn't say it feels like you're being burnt. So I'm going to say that's a fake.
Ooh. It's a fact.
Oh.
It's what generates the body to sweat, because the sweat thinks the temperature has risen and therefore it's going into a burn state. So it makes you sweat and perspire. And its chili peppers have this chemical capsaicin, I suppose that's how you say it, which naturally binds to the pain receptors in our nerves, and they make them believe they're being burnt.
Interesting.
It is, okay. Yeah. So do you have chilies in yours?
Sorry?
Any chilies in your broths?
Not currently, no, but we are about to develop one with some. So.
Oh yeah. So watch chili.
Yeah.
What should we do? Last one here. American as apple pie is the saying, but it's not likely because the apple pie was invented in Bavaria in Germany. Is that a fact or a fake?
Oh, I think that's a fact.
Oh, I've got you again, because the pie as a foodstuff was created in medieval England. Yo, England.
Oh, gosh.
And the nice lattice crust that you see on many of them was invented by the Dutch. So, sorry, Americans, and we do have some American listeners and other American interviews on the show, but I'm sorry, when you say as American as apple pie, you're basically saying you're as British.
Not as American. Yeah.
Which kind of tells a story if you ask me, but
Yeah.
our side of the story. Thank you very much for participating in that. I'm going to take my glorious win and tell Mike about it, because he hates it when I win. And just leaves me to thank you very much, Ros, for joining us on the Green Elephant Show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We really hope that you found this special B Corp Month episode both informative and entertaining. Make sure you don't miss any of the 31 interviews with B corporations who are striving to be a force for good. So make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss a thing, and don't forget to spread the word with others. If you have any questions about being or becoming a B Corp, or any comments and suggestions about the show, please do get in touch. You can email studio@greenelephant.show, or visit the website greenelephant.show, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube or Twitter by searching for Green Elipod or The Green Elephant Show. You can also review the show on Google and Apple Podcasts. Join us tomorrow, and we hope you have a sustainable day.